Growth is a characteristic of living. All living organisms grow. Features of growth are increase in mass or increase in number. Unicellular organisms grow by cell division. That is, one cell divides in two, two divides in four, and so on. This can be observed in vitro culture, that is, in a lab, by counting the number of cells in the microscope. Here, growth and reproduction are fairly same. Multicellular organisms also grow by cell division. For example, in plants, growth occurs continuously, that is, throughout the lifespan. But here, growth and reproduction are not same, as after cell division, no new organism or no new individual is formed as such. The growth takes place in the same plant throughout. In animals, growth occurs too by cell division, but only up to a certain age. It does not continue. However, in certain tissues, the cell division can occur in order to replace the lost cells. If increase in body mass is growth, non-living substances like mountain, sand mounds also show these criteria. But here, growth is by accumulation of materials on surface and not from within. So this is growth but not living. A dead organism who was once alive does not grow anymore. And so we can say that growth is a characteristic of living organism, but it alone cannot define living. Reproduction is a characteristic of living. Multicellular organisms follow sexual reproduction, where the progeny produced has features more or less similar to the parents. Asexual reproduction occurs in lower animals, like fungi produces millions of spores and spreads very fast. The yeast produces asexually by budding. This is how they produce a new individual. Hydra also reproduces asexually by budding. There are these flatworms called planaria. They reproduce by a system called regeneration, where fragmented organism regenerates the lost part and becomes new individual. So wherever the organism is cut, it will regenerate a whole new organism. Regeneration also takes place in filaments of algae and proteinema of the green mosses that spreads on the rocks and the bricks during monsoon. These are the kind of reproduction. However, non-living things do not reproduce. They do not replicate. But there are some living organisms we do not reproduce, like mule, the worker bee of the honeycomb, and few infertile couples. So, although reproduction is a characteristic of living organism and not found in non-living, it alone cannot define living. Metabolism is a characteristic of living. What is metabolism? It is the sum total of all the chemical reactions in our body. Now, which chemical reactions? Okay. Organisms are made of chemicals. They are small or big or of different classes and functions. They constantly are made and changed in different molecules by thousands of reactions called chemical reactions. Such reactions are not shown in non-living organisms. However, these reactions can be very well demonstrated outside the living cell in a test tube as an isolated free reaction. Now, even if these are not living things, they can definitely be called living reactions. and hence metabolism is a characteristic of living organism, but it alone again cannot define living. So it is clear that although there are ifs and buts, we can definitely conclude growth, reproduction and metabolism are characteristics of living. It's just that they alone do not define one. So now let us look at more defining characteristics of living, that is cellular organization and consciousness. Cellular organization is a defining characteristics of living thing. It is the basis of evolution. The micro and macromolecules functions together to form the basic cell structure called the cell organelles. Many such organelles, they function together to form a unit called a cell. There are organisms who complete their whole life in one single cell, and they are called unicellular organisms. However, in multicellular organism, there are many such different types of cells. Such cells join together and arrange themselves to form structures known as the tissues. Different tissue layers form organs, example stomach, intestine, liver. Such and many organs functions in a systematic manner to form organ system, example digestive system, excretory system, respiratory system, skeletal system, nervous system, and many more such systems come in a rhythmic manner and make work the whole organism as one. This is called cellular organization and is found in humans, animals, plants, lower multicellular organisms, as well as unicellular organisms. This feature is found only and in all living things. And so we can conclude that cellular organization is a defining characteristic of living. Consciousness is the characteristic of living. Organism has ability to sense the surrounding or the environment and respond to the stimuli, which is physically, chemically or biologically. These stimuli and responses are done by sense organs like nose, touch, by eyes, it's vision, by ears, and by tongue, that's the taste bud. Plants also respond to external factors like light, organism, climate or the temperature of the surrounding, water, support, and touch. Even unicellular organisms like prokaryotes like amoeba, they sense the food and engulf them by chemical senses, by chemical reactions. However, human is the only organism who is aware of himself and therefore has self-consciousness. This feature is found in all living organisms, and so we can conclude that consciousness is a defining characteristic of the living. It is sometimes difficult to define the living state in human. If a person is in coma, the brain is dead and therefore they don't have any self-consciousness. However, the machines is virtually supporting and keeping the hearts and lungs alive. And so, we cannot definitely define the living state easily. Living phenomenon is due to underlying reactions. Example, properties of tissues are not in the cell, but the interactions of the cell. Similarly, properties of cellular organelles are interaction of the molecular components which are there inside the cell organelles. This phenomena is true in hierarchy of organizational complexity in all the levels. So, a living self-replicates, self-evolve, self-regulate, and interact such that it responds to the stimuli in the surrounding. So Biology is a story of life on Earth, of how evolution of organism has occurred, and how past, present and future organisms are linked together by basic common genetic material. It has the sense of response to each other. Learning all these characteristics of living will help us to understand the next part of the chapter, that is diversity of the living world. In next video, we shall study the part 2 of the chapter 1, that is diversity of the living world.